Okay, looks like we are live. Hello, everyone. Here is SKALE core team, Jeka Holleran, Stan Kladko, and myself, Jenia Barkanova. We're here with SKALE Token Holder AMA. This is a regular event, and this is the Token Holder AMA number 3. Today, we will do our best to cover as many questions as possible, so we will get right to it. And for today, guys, expect really exciting announcements, expect in-depth conversation on SKALE technology and the future of the protocol. And we are super happy to see massive community from all over the world supporting SKALE and supporting the protocol. So, Jack, Stan, ready?
Yeah, hey, before we get started, I just want to say hi to everybody. And where is everybody dialing in from? Say hello in the chat. Hey, I see Adam,
I love it.
Richard, Thaddeus, Tom, Ella,
Holland, yeah, Ukraine, Puerto Rico, London, Oakland, Belgium. Love it, Kharkiv. I love how the entire planet is always represented in the AMAs. So we will get right to it. We have a lot of questions that were submitted on a form that was a part of the sign-up process. We'll start answering those questions, and please ask your live questions in the questions tab. We will get to them as soon as possible. So, Jack, the first question I have is for you, and that is the question on the SKALE network upgrade. What is the status of the network upgrade? Can you please tell us?
Okay, great. So we are getting very, very close. I think a lot of people are familiar with the Berlin hard fork update. So that is a change of the Ethereum mainnet. So the Ethereum mainnet will actually hard fork, and a lot of the smart contracts, the gas fees, the mechanics of how Ethereum functions is going to alter. And so for the SKALE upgrade, we are ready now. We're ready to go. We have a dead period at the end of the month during the bounty delivery. During that period, we're not able to actually upgrade the network. So that pushes us then to the beginning of April, which also pushes us up against the Berlin hard fork upgrade. So this is open source. There's a very strong developer community at the SKALE core team, open source contributors to the code, and also an incredible technology community around the Validator set of the SKALE network. These very, very smart individuals were able to get together, talk, communicate, collaborate. There's discussion. As of, I believe, this morning, a decision to wait until after the Berlin hard fork upgrade, and it's a decision that I'm highly in favor of. If we push out in advance of the upgrade, we have potential issues with validators' systems not being ready to accept the upgrade, and then having issues during this transition of Ethereum. And I'd actually like Stan to talk a little bit more about what does this upgrade mean from the Ethereum perspective, and why it's a win for SKALE to roll out immediately following as compared to before the network upgrade. So Stan, do you want to give a little thinking there?
Totally. Definitely any network upgrade is a risky thing. So a Berlin fork means that all of ETH servers, every ETH node around the world needs to first be upgraded with a new version, and then this new version will support some new features. Some features will be modified. So it's actually quite similar to when you on your laptop, you're upgrading, your Windows from Windows 10 to Windows 11. Very similar. And as you imagine, let's imagine you want to install a game on your laptop. Would you install it on Windows 10 and then upgrade, or would you first upgrade and then install your game? Definitely upgrading first makes more sense, because then when you install your game, your application, it will actually from the beginning run on the new thing. So because of this reason, I think the week of April 14, when ETH is going to do this Berlin fork, is going to be very hectic for the community, and also for people that run, for applications that run on ETH. So our current plan is to upgrade the next week after the Berlin fork. to let people run the network a little bit, so we don't release our stuff immediately during the fork. Other than that, I think our internal networks have been running pretty smoothly. We don't have much bugs remaining. Most of the work internally is done on monitoring tools that allow us to see what's happening in the network, also on some UIs. The core chains are running pretty smoothly, as I already mentioned. And I think we've been releasing some demos, and we'll be releasing more demos of our chains. They're going to be pretty fast, I think. Out of ETH compatible chains, they will be the fastest ever released. So you'll see very fast block times and pretty good performance.
Yeah, and I want to add one more thing. Okay, we've got an echo. Okay. Jenny, I don't know if you but maybe Stan, you and Jenny can go on mute.
I'm muted already.
Okay.
All right. Here we go. Okay, there we go. Stand to mute. We're ready to roll. So one other update that I'm incredibly excited about with the upgrade, the rollout process is I think evolving, and there's a blog post going out tomorrow on, and I think we're going to call it an even more modular scale chain and scale environment. So when you think of the scale network, you have scale chains, and that's the blockchain that can be created through the scale network. There's many nodes in the network. Via the mainnet and the scale network, cryptographically, securely, blockchains can be created. These are scale chains. And then when we take these scale chains, you can actually inject services in those chains that support dApps. These services, one is a bridge. So IMA bridge allows a scale chain to communicate back and forth to the Ethereum mainnet, or from scale chain to scale chain. There's also file storage would be a service in this situation where you can actually run an entire front end. You could run the front end of a Facebook or a Twitter, or actually store files. And this is similar to what you get with a Filecoin or Arweave or other file storage solutions. There's also pieces like Scale ML, or being able to run machine learning algorithms, neural net Keras models in smart contracts to say, yes or no, this meets criteria, or do image recognition in a smart contract, et cetera. So these are all pieces that we prior had been thinking of all being an encapsulated part of a scale chain. And what's happening is we're actually making this even more modular, where you have scale chains, and then you have these appended services that can be appended and connected at the will of the developer, okay? The cool thing about this is what we get is it actually, I think it puts rocket fuel on the ecosystem approach. And right now there's probably like 10 world-class bridging solutions that are being created, and they're being created in a vertical specific manner. So you see bridging solutions that are completely dialed in for DeFi. Other bridging solutions may be more valuable for a social network or gaming, et cetera. You look at oracles, you look at different sort of services like machine learning. And so what happens is scale is going to be the centerpiece, the scale chain, and these services will be able to be appended and added at the will of the developer. And then the other piece of this is they're going to be able to be upgraded. And so this is a critical thing. And I think everyone's seeing like Uniswap right now. There's V1 and V2 and V3. We don't want to have a V2 of scale and a V3 of scale. We don't want people needing to kill their scale chain because they have to upgrade a bridge, okay? So there's effort also going in not to base functionality, but to making these things interchangeable, upgradable, and interoperable. And so the first version is going to have a scale chain that goes up by itself, and then there'll be an IMA release, and then immediately you'll see people, they can use Connect's bridge. They'll be able to use other bridges. They'll be able to use other solutions as part of the scale universe in a much more, I'd say, user-friendly and developer-friendly manner. So we're really pumped about it. Technical details and some diagrams and architecture maps will be coming out very soon.
I love to hear that. Jack, can you also talk about the multi-chain aspect of all this, as it's very powerful and fundamentally important to Ethereum?
Yeah, so I think thanks, Jenny. I think it's good to call that out. That's a piece of the scale story that sometimes I think is underrepresented or undervalued. So when you think about blockchains, oftentimes people, they just is one blockchain that provides a service to many, okay? So if you think of Scale and Ethereum, for example, Ethereum's just one highway that's got it's got 15 lanes and every car goes through that highway. Scale is a highway next to it, but there's an unlimited number of lanes and every car gets its own lane, okay? And each one of those lanes in this situation is representative of a blockchain. These are called app-specific blockchains. And if you look at this architecture is really taking off. You look at Cosmos, you look at Polkadot, but even Polkadot, I think, has 100 parachains they're launching. And you look at Scale, it's actually grows linearly. The more and more nodes that show up, the more chains that can be created. So one day we hope to have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of Scale chains, and each one being dedicated to individual applications or to businesses that want to build services or applications to then sell via their Scale chain. And that's something really unique to the Scale network, that multi-blockchain architecture. It's also very different from like side chain solutions that are out there that are one chain that's connected to the Ethereum mainnet and everybody shares this one chain. What's being built here, what the core dev team and the open source community is building is an incredibly complicated and sophisticated network that doesn't require a single person to deploy any Docker containers. It literally is an autonomous network that can piece together blockchains at the will and request of developers without human intervention. Stan, you want to add to that at all? And I know, sorry, Jenny, I know we've got another question, but I love hearing Stan talk about this.
Yeah, I think, what we think is going to happen is that several years from now, the world is going to move to Web3. So we see that people are not happy about centralized solutions and they want to move to Web3. So that's pretty much our first bet. We believe in the Web3, but we believe that Web3 is going to be ETH compatible. It's going to be executed and built using ETH tools such as Solidity, MetaMask, Truffle, Hardhat, you name it. So we believe that the way history is going to go is that ETH ecosystem is going to grow into Web3 ecosystem. And that's the main difference between us and companies like Dfinity or Polkadot. These guys are trying to create their own ecosystems. We believe that Web3 is going to evolve essentially from ETH ecosystem. So when you release our chains, you'll be able to host websites on them, and you'll be able to run on Scale chains pretty much anything you run on Web today, on Web 2. You would be able to run email, you would be able to run things like word processing, social networks, pretty much anything that you can run in the cloud, you'll be able to run on Scale in a ETH compatible manner. And that's how we see the future. And many people are already lined up to run on Scale chains. So when we release our chains, we believe that there will be a very significant number of apps that will actually use this opportunity to go into Web3.
Yeah, love it. Thank you, Stan. Thank you, Jack. So this morning, Scale did an important announcement. And this is an announcement of Scale and ConsenSys partnership. And this is the enterprise partnership. Jack, why is it so important? What is the importance of this for Scale? And what is the importance of this for blockchain and layer 2 overall?
Okay, so if anyone didn't see the announcement, please check it out. Go to the Scale blog or search ConsenSys and Scale. I'll give a quick summary first. So ConsenSys, I think, has the most mature and sophisticated practice towards deploying Ethereum for the enterprise, okay? And I could just say, for that matter, deploying blockchain applications to the enterprise. And I think we've seen IBM and some other players get involved in the space, but they're also very collaborative with ConsenSys. So ConsenSys, is, in my opinion and the opinion of many other people, is the #1 game in town to go deploy a blockchain. And if you're an enterprise, or if you're a Fortune 1000 company, Global 2000 company, you don't just go and point to an RPC endpoint and an IP address, okay, and just deploy to the mainnet. You actually need to think about who your users are, how you're tracking the data, how you're managing support, how you're integrating blockchain functionality to a usable software system. So ConsenSys has a full suite of products that lets the top enterprises in the world go deploy Ethereum and manage it effectively, upgrade it effectively, understand their users. And so this suite of products is focused on Ethereum. And one of the issues with enterprises, and one of the key problems, is the pricing on Ethereum and gas fees. It's completely unpredictable. And so if you go to your CFO and say, hey, we want to use this, here's the value prop, and give us a budget of $100,000 of gas this year. And then you go back to the CFO and you say, oh, we actually spent $4 million in gas. The CFO will not be happy, okay? The other thing is performance on the mainnet, as we know, is slow also. The mainnet is great. It does a lot of highly valuable things, but when you can connect your mainnet application to scale, if you're an enterprise, all of a sudden your block times are 0.35 to 0.45 seconds. You can do hundreds or thousands of transactions per second, depending on the chain size you're renting from the network. And your price is predictable. You buy SKALE tokens and you pay for a year, and you get your chain for a year or 2 years. And so what happens is this is actually very friendly to an enterprise use case environment. Now, the SKALE core team efforts have been really focused on developer growth in the Ethereum ecosystem, because that's the market you have to go win in this open source battle. But by partnering with ConsenSys and ConsenSys saying, hey, we believe in the SKALE network, we're going to go add the SKALE network to our suite of products when we go sell. They know how to sell to enterprise. They have the customers. It makes their practice better, and it helps make Ethereum better. And so I think this is hugely powerful, because enterprises in the past have only been deploying for primarily pilots on private networks, which means proof of authority networks. They're now starting to say, hey, let's use mainnet. Let's use open blockchain environments. And if we do that, how do we do that in a way that's meaningful and lets us execute in a way that works for traditional environments? So SKALE is not limited to DeFi, gaming, dApp environments. It also extends into the enterprise world as the enterprise world starts to catch up, and even more so the SMB world, which I think will be an even bigger market than enterprise for blockchain in the next 2 years.
Yeah, I love to hear that. And Jack, you have so much experience with enterprise from your previous startup. Can you explain why it matters so much, and how big is the enterprise and also SMB market?
Yeah, I worked in enterprise. I did enterprise startups for about 15 years. And we're talking like it's trillions and trillions of dollars of spend. I mean, you just look at AWS alone. The majority of AWS's revenue is coming from, it's all B2B revenue, right? Look at Google Cloud, look at, the revenues of Oracle and Salesforce. I mean, these are, now, hey, a lot of what blockchain is doing, it's disrupting these middlemen and these incumbent players. But as that happens, smart people that work at companies don't go away. They're just going to shift and adopt new practices to get growth. And some of that growth means giving more power to users and opening up more in terms of control and data ownership. So I think you're going to see enterprise adopt. And if you think of SKALE being, the goal for SKALE is to be what AWS is, and Amazon EC2 and Amazon storage for the Web3 environment and the decentralized cloud as we start making this shift. And it's not limited just to disruptive DAO organizations. It also can apply to businesses that want to take advantage of these value propositions.
That's great. Thank you, Jack. So the next question, let's go into the discussion of the future. And let's talk about the long-term technical vision for SKALE Network, and also speak about the ultimate goals of the network.
Hey, Stan hit this earlier, but Stan, why don't you talk a little more? I love hearing Stan. Stan's really a visionary. The SKALE Network came from his brain. So it's really fun hearing him talk about this.
I think we always, from the beginning, we tried to understand what our large scale and large long-term goals are. And we kind of compare ourselves to Tesla. There's Tesla Roadster, and then there is Tesla Model S and Tesla Model 3. So pretty much any project starts with something simple and then grows. And in our case, The current network is kind of Tesla. I would say it's Tesla Roadster. You can use it for many things, but it's not so large, and it doesn't really have the computational power comparable to AWS or Google. The long-term vision, if Web3, and we believe that it's going to happen, that Web3 will actually replace Web 2. If Web3 replaces Web 2, we need as much computational power in Web 3 as currently in Web 2. Google, AWS, Microsoft, all of those companies have at least 10 million servers each. So if SKALE Network wants to compete with Google, at some point, we need to get 10 million servers. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in 1 year. But a generation from now, people will do things differently. And people who are born in this digital age, they take decentralization really personally. It's the way the world works. They don't accept the world which is centralized. They want to live in a world which is decentralized. So the new generation, for them, this notion of decentralization is very natural. So when the generation will change, people will move to decentralized infrastructures. And that's pretty much our long-term goal. We want everything which runs on Web 2 to run on Web 3, but with no monopoly or centralization or anyone having too much power. It's going to be a much more balanced economy and a much more balanced world where people will have to cooperate much more, and blockchain will be a tool for cooperation. At some point, I asked on Twitter how people see blockchain, and I think the best answer, one person said they see blockchain is a bicycle for fairness, for being fair. Using a blockchain, you create a fair economy where people feel that they actually get what compensated for their work, and then also the community cooperates. It's a cooperative environment. So I hope that together we'll build an economy like this and SKALE. We hope that SKALE will be an important part of this new economy.
Yeah, I love it.
I want to add to that a little bit, and thanks, Stan. I think that's really astute. That's a, I think, good macro view. And another thing I just want to call out is when people think of SKALE, I think they think about it in a few different ways. One, it's easy to say, okay, there's Ethereum, and then I just need layer 2 scaling, and there's this bucket of layer 2s. And some people would say, oh no, SKALE is a layer 1, and it's trying to, but when I look at the ecosystem and I look at, there's these big layer 1 players, there's all these layer 2 techniques, and almost none of them are blockchains. SKALE is the only network of its type that literally has the economics and the technical structure in terms of the containerization and microservices and the cryptography with BLS threshold signatures and DKG and the connection back to the Ethereum mainnet, where Ethereum is orchestrating the SKALE network, where every blockchain, every application, every company can have their own version of Ethereum with world-class performance, with better than layer 1 performance, with layer 1 security, and decentralization properties that you don't find in the layer 2 kind of microcosm. Okay, so SKALE is this. It's actually what I like to say. It's an execution layer, and I think at some point people are going to start thinking about blockchains as a foundational layer for settlement, and then there's a layer where things happen. And that's where smart contracts happen. That's where execution happens. And that's, again, back to that analogy of the highway. Every car has its own highway. It's still an open public blockchain, but in an autonomous fashion without middlemen, someone can show up and deploy their own blockchain. And that's powerful. That's what gets us excited. This is a lifetime mission for us. The core team's vesting schedules are just started in October, and it's a 4-year schedule. And most people I know on the core team want to work on SKALE their whole life. We're passionate about it, and prices and things like this happen, but we're laser focused on delivering real results. And there's pieces of marketing and hype and awareness that are critical, but we firmly believe that if we can deliver, this community can deliver, the the open source Scale community can deliver, that there's limitless potential. So we're very excited.
Yeah, that's massive, Jack. And I also wanted to add that the future that we are moving towards is the future in which millions of smart contracts will be running on Ethereum and on the layer 2, massive part of which is Scale. And Scale has capacity to support millions of smart contracts executing every second without competing with each other. It's very important. So that's the future we're building towards, and that's the capacity that we are making possible, and that's fundamentally enabled by Scale technology. So let's go forward. We really zoomed out to talk about technology. Now let's zoom in and let's give a 60-second elevator pitch of what is Scale. So we have a question from somebody who joined community recently. He really likes the project, wants to tell to his friends about it, and he's asking, what's the 60-second elevator pitch?
So I think part of this it's kind of a trick question because it depends on who you're talking to. If you're talking to a PhD cryptography researcher, it's different than somebody who's an enthusiast and smart about blockchain. And I think the easiest answer to anybody is, I like going back to this analogy where Ethereum is a highway that's shared by every single car. Scale is a highway that has an unlimited number of lanes where every car has its own lane. And this, when you want to drive on the Scale network, you get on the Ethereum highway, you take the first exit to get onto Scale. And when you want to leave, you take the exit back to Ethereum to go home. Okay. It's next to Ethereum. It's completely, the roads made of the same material. The rules are the same on each. It's just a lot faster and with predictable costs and dramatically lower costs to use. And it adds value to the main highway because Ethereum is incredibly valuable as being a stable, immutable force, right? And it's meant to complement, these highways complement each other.
That's a great pitch. So the next,
do you want to add to that too? Stan might have a different.
Yeah, I want to add, I just want to use this analogy again, bicycle for fairness, that so many people want to do so many things now on ETH. And that's the reason why gas prices are so high, because people want to do so many different things on blockchain. So they basically clog the network. And this problem prevents people from actually realizing what they want to do on the blockchain. So I think we want to be a platform that provides people means to essentially realize their dreams, or at least projects they want to run. So I think once Scale chains are released, people won't have any problem with blockchain performance or having enough blockchains. Scale potentially can have like infinite number of blockchains, right? And as the community grows, Scale network can grow too. And then we enable people to realize what actually they want to do in this new decentralized world.
I like this. The next question I have is for Stan. So Scale has state-of-art engineering. And also Stan is bringing in a lot of fundamentally important Silicon Valley experience, having been on the early Java team. So Stan, can you please talk about Scale engineering process and about the rigorous use case testing?
Yeah, so Scale is quite a unique system. It's probably one of the most complex systems ever created in software engineering, and we didn't want it to be complex. We wanted it to be simple. But anyway, it's a pretty complex system because, as you see, imagine it's a network. The network is composed of many different nodes, and some of these nodes are maybe malicious. We allow for up to 1/3 of malicious nodes, and the network still needs to survive. So it's a pretty complex system, and the fact that blockchain even works, it's very non-trivial, especially if you want to have it working fast. The reason why Scale actually works is because it's mathematically provable. We know we have the mathematical specification of every little thing, and we know that there are no security holes. and the mathematics provides us this very solid foundation. And that's been always a difference between us and many, many other projects. We are mathematically provable, other projects are not, and having a solid mathematical foundation is extremely important, especially when the project is complex. And then on top of it, we have testing. I think for the last several months, the product itself is very stable. So the more things that our programmers are doing, our software engineers are doing, writing test units and different types of testing. So we have a pretty well-tested product, also combined with the fact that we are also have very strong mathematical foundation. And if you look at SKALE on GitHub, you will see that bugs, actually, we have fewer and fewer bugs, and we pretty much perfect the product more and more. And if you look at some other projects, you will see that they have constant flow of bugs, and sometimes actually the number of bugs is increasing. And that's a sign of a situation where if you don't have a mathematical foundation, you could have a project which is randomly designed. And then you will never be able to fix all of the bugs, because when you fix one bug, you will actually, another bug will appear, right? So mathematics allows us to perfect things, and we know how it should work. So bugs become kind of smaller and less important, and the project becomes more and more stable. And I think we are pretty stable now, and pretty much the entire year of 2021 will be spent on stability, making project even more and more stable, and also on usability, making it usable, providing documentation, help, anything which makes it easy to run the product.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. Oh, thank you, Stan. So the next question I have is for Jack. And Jack, it's a great question, as it hits at one of the most important aspects of what SKALE is. So what makes SKALE stand out? So the person who asks heard a lot about that some projects can run at over 5,000 transactions per second. And what he heard about SKALE is that SKALE can handle 2,000 per second. So why is that so important?
Yeah, so actually I want to talk about two pieces here. I think one, the growth of the validator market. Two, I think what you just referenced. I'll handle the latter second of transactions per second. So one, TPS is not that critical. What matters are block times and low costs, right? So we're looking performance is more critical now. Now, over the next couple of years, throughput's going to be a much bigger issue when we get more and more applications using blockchain. And so on SKALE, if you said, hey, SKALE, let's say a medium chain, which is 1/32 of a node. So one node could be on 32 different chains, all right? So in that environment, if I have 100 medium chains, so let's say, and each one of them can do 100 transactions per second, then I'm doing 10,000 transactions per second, okay? And if I have 1,000, I'm doing 100,000 transactions per second. If there's 10,000 medium chains, the numbers keep going up. So the amount of transactions per second in SKALE is not limited. It will grow to meet the demand of applications. More and more applications come, the SKALE network will do more and more transactions per second, okay? And that's the way the economics work. That's the way the architecture works and functions. So to say another network could do 7,000 or 5,000 and SKALE could do, one large scale chain could do 2,000. It's really an apples to oranges comparison, because if you just have more SKALE nodes in the SKALE network, it can do dramatically more than, comparing. And so let's say you have a network, a blockchain that has 5,000 transactions per second, and they have 1,000 applications. Well, each application only does 5 transactions per second, where on SKALE, each one could do 100 per second with a medium chain, or 2,000 with a large chain. So that's apples to oranges. I think it's important for people to realize that when you're comparing TPS numbers, okay? The other piece I want to talk about is the growth of the validator market. And this is something too that, I have to, Stan just deserves a lot of credit for understanding how this market was going to grow. And when we thought of the security models, when we thought of the number of nodes on a scale chain, a big piece of the thinking was around who's going to run those chains. Okay, this is an open source network. Scale, we don't run a single node, right? The core team. The foundation doesn't run a single node. Other people run the nodes, other businesses. And so Stan recognized that, hey, these people and businesses that run nodes aren't just going to run nodes on Scale, but proof of stake is going to be a massive industry, and they're going to run nodes for ETH2. They're going to run nodes for Cosmos, Polkadot, Near, Solana, etc. Right? All these other proof of stake networks. And you know what? There's 100 and some change validators that run over 80% of all proof of stake networks. If any one of these validators acts malicious and tries to do a double spend and steal money from an app on any of these networks, on a Scale chain, on Polkadot, on ETH2, guess what? They lose their money and they lose their business. So if somebody steals from Scale, a validator, they're going to lose all the delegator support on ETH2. And so what you get is this shared security model across. So it's almost like a blockchain incentives that live across blockchains. And it adds even more security in it. And it lets us use blockchains for their purpose. We don't have to do crazy complex things with mathematical proofs and centralization to try to scale. And this, I think, dynamic is something that was not that well understood of how this validator market would grow in 2016 when people were saying, how do we scale Ethereum? In 2017, when Stan and I met, he once saw the architecture, but he also had a feeling of how the validator economy would grow. And it's done just that. By the way, 80% and 100 and some validators controlling all proof of stake is still dramatically more decentralized than proof of work networks like Bitcoin and Ethereum, where 5 companies or mining pools could really just basically take the entire asset, right? They don't do that because it doesn't serve them financially, because it's blockchains work that way. People are incentivized to act well, and the same thing will happen in proof of stake, but the penalties exist not just within one network, but across all networks, which makes proof of stake even more secure. Okay.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to that as of today, total value locked in Scale network is over $2.5 billion. And Scale runs on over 150 nodes, and network is supported by over 50 independent validator orgs. So it's very spectacularly massive.
And I see a question from Blue. I'll answer it really quickly. So slashing will be turned on very soon with through decentralized governance. And then that's exactly the model. So let's say I'm a music streaming service and I have $1 billion of value on my Scale chain. And those scale nodes try to steal that money. Well, they lose all of the collateral in the Scale chain that's staked, and they lose all their business everywhere else too, is my point. And so this, right now you can delegate and stake with zero risk, but that's going to change. And it actually makes everybody's stake even more valuable. It's also important, again, to work with a validator that is strong. And all the validators in the Scale network are world class. And I think Stan and I stake, and Jenia, we all stake with them, with every single one of them. So we're fully in support and have confidence in them.
Yes, thank you, Jack. And I will actually go into asking questions from the questions tab, as the questions are fantastic. And first, I will focus on those that were the most upvoted. So first of all, can you, Jack, give more information on how a developer will pay for the service of Scale chain? So this touches on important aspect of tokenomics and how much you will need to pay.
Yep. So the Scale token is the liquid fabric that keeps this virtuous cycle going of performance, stability, staking collateral, payment, et cetera. And so the way it functions is, if I want to rent a Scale chain for a period of time, there's all this compute power in the network. And think of it as a pool. There's a pool with a bunch of water in it. And I want a bucket of the water. I have to pay in Scale tokens for that bucket of water. Now, who am I paying? I'm actually paying people that run the nodes. They all bring water. They provide the water to the pool. and they maintain it, right? They reinforce that pool wall, and they get paid in scale. But guess what? They don't just get paid. People can go and take scale tokens and stake it into the network to reinforce that validator, and they get paid through the dApps. Now, at the beginning, there's a lot of inflation. And I think people are like, oh, the inflation's really high. There's a lot of new tokens coming in every month. Well, that keeps going down and down and down. And it's meant to bootstrap the network. Then eventually that goes down and fees are low, and then fees get really high. And then there's hardly any inflation. It's all fees. And there's an ecosystem going that also there's a price curve. So if a lot of people are renting scale chains and there's not much water left in the pool, the excess water left costs a lot of money, costs more scale. And guess what? More people are going to bring more water to the pool, and it makes the price go down. And so it's a supply-demand curve with price elasticity that is meant to keep the network growing and growing and growing. And that's where Stan says we can have tens of thousands or millions of servers someday. And that's the model of the SKALE token. And so developers can go buy a SKALE token on Uniswap or anywhere, stake it through the SKALE network, just like people do to stake their tokens to get return. They stake to pay. And then that money goes into this bounty pool that then gets shared with all the delegators and validators.
That's great. Thank you. So the next question, very, very, very upvoted. Can SKALE run on any other network outside of Ethereum, maybe Polkadot? And if yes, when is it going to happen?
So I'd like Stan, you know what would be interesting to talk about? Why don't you talk about the Ethereum ecosystem and just like how we're going to get Bitcoin running in SKALE? And Stan, please, I think you've got a good perspective here.
So I think both me and Jack, we're startup guys. You know, we come from startup environment. Both of us did many startups in our life, and there are some laws of startups. The law number one of a startup, you only solve a problem if this problem exists. So if currently there are many layer one networks, right? And many of them have huge amounts of money in terms of their token price, right? But there are only two networks that people actually use. And those networks are Ethereum and Bitcoin. And Bitcoin doesn't support smart contracts. ETH supports smart contracts. Both ETH and Bitcoin, I think they're not startups anymore. They are pretty established players nowadays. But the rest of the networks are startups. So if Polkadot or something else ever, gets any user traction, we would definitely consider this. But what we see currently is that Ethereum is not just the network number one. It's pretty much the only smart contract-based network that people use. And we believe that other networks are not really needed in the sense that you can do anything on Ethereum. And then in the Ethereum ecosystem, you can have all kinds of Ethereum blockchains. You can have fast blockchains, slow blockchains, POW, POS. You can have cheap blockchains, expensive blockchains. But all of those blockchains can be part of ETH ecosystem. And we already see some other blockchains which are part of the ecosystem. For instance, Binance chain, which is kind of centralized, but it's still part of Ethereum ecosystem. You can execute Ethereum contracts on it, or DAI, for instance, XDAI. So we see that the only ecosystem that actually people use is ETH ecosystem, and it just keeps on growing. And other ecosystems don't really have much traction. I've been making these jokes. I've been going to different block explorers or different other networks, and what you see is most of them have 0 transactions per second. Maybe they're built to have thousands of transactions per second, but what they have is 0 transactions per second, because you have to attract users, and users frankly don't see much need for another ecosystem on top of ETH, in addition to ETH. Bitcoin is a different thing. Bitcoin is a huge ecosystem. And it just Bitcoin can't run smart contracts, and we need additional cryptography to support Bitcoin. Once we add this cryptography, we'll support Bitcoin, we'll support all other Bitcoin compatible networks like Monero, you name it. So that's a high priority item for us for 2021 to connect to Bitcoin. And then if we connect to Bitcoin, if we're able to transfer Bitcoins to scale, the fun thing is going to be that Bitcoin will suddenly become subject to smart contracts. So you'll be able to transfer Bitcoin to scale, and then it will be as good of a ERC20 token as any other ERC20 token. And that's something that's really interesting for us because Bitcoin is a huge ecosystem. So to make a long story short, the way we see things is that as a startup, we only need to go after problems which exist. Currently, there are two networks which exist that people use, Bitcoin and ETH. So for the time being, we think we need to concentrate on those networks.
Yeah, and to add one thing to that, if you think about Bitcoin, and I'm going to go back to what I said at the very beginning when I talked about an even more modular scale. So scale can use threshold signatures to help deposit and lock Bitcoin and then transfer those over to the scale network and let them run in the scale network. The scale community can build a scale BTC. But what maybe is an even wiser decision is putting a lot of effort into making interoperability with WBTC and TBTC and all these BTC wrapping solutions that exist. And then in a matter of weeks, you can run Bitcoin in scale because of the connection to the Keep network and WBTC and other Ethereum BTC options. Now, that's not to say the scale open source community won't also create that in a bespoke fashion for the scale network, but it's something that is by having an ecosystem approach, we immediately open up to other functionalities and businesses and communities and capture more value for the scale network.
Yeah, and they wanted to add that the scale is built to be by default compatible with the entire Ethereum ecosystem, from wallets to token standards to important protocols that are running on Ethereum, and is also built to go way beyond that. So modularity is very important, as it allows for flexibility and the ability to evolve in the long term in a very flexible way. So the author of this question also mentioned Polkadot, and I think it's very important that Scale is actually bringing Polkadot-like functionality to ETH, but Scale chains will be fully modular, really easy to scale, really easy to connect to ETH, and again, as I already said, integrated with the entire Ethereum ecosystem. So let's go forward, and we have really good questions from people who want to become Scale Validator. I think this is for Stan. And so for those people who want to become Scale Validator, when will they be able to join and support the network? What are the overall requirements to experience, equipment, maybe some points on the costs? Stan, can you please tackle that?
That's a great question. First of all, a good thing about Scale is that pretty much anyone will be able to become a validator ultimately, because the network will grow. If you are a validator on EOS, there are like 21 validators. There can't be more validators actively running because there are 21 servers in the network. In Scale, the network grows linearly, so we can have many validators. Because we need still to kind of start the network, we couldn't accept all validators at the same time. We would pretty much like burn and crash. So we have a program where you can apply it to become a validator. It's a temporary solution. In the future, this program will be relaxed and anyone will become a validator. But because there's so much interest, we had to kind of, have some structure to let people in. So the best way to become a Scale validator is to become part of this program. But the sure way, what we are really interested in is to someone that contributes to a Scale open source project, because we want to grow our open source community. So if you want to become a validator, the simplest way to get in is to contribute to SKALE, maybe help us with documentation or some tests, or you can find a small bug on our GitHub, or I think documentation is the easiest thing. You can just try installing SKALE and see if it's user friendly or not, and help us with documentation. So to make long story short, the easiest way to get in front of others and to become a validator is to contribute to our project, to our open source. And then we can, especially SKALE engineering, can help you maybe get some treatment from our executive team, whatever. So try to join SKALE community. Running the software is kind of medium, requires some medium IT skills. You should be able to use things like AWS or bare metal servers or Docker. So to be a validator, I would say you need to be as experienced as a pretty much average DevOps person doing DevOps work in IT.
And hey, I want to add to that too, something I think that's really important to recognize is the gating factor right now that we are very aware of is it's not the cost of the hardware, it's the minimum stake requirement. And what there was a very high MSR because there weren't that many dApps. We didn't need much supply. And so for the validators to actually show up and want to run SKALE, if the minimum stake requirement per node was too low, then the hardware cost would have been dramatically high. It would have been, it wouldn't have been economically a win when the network is bootstrapping. So therefore, there's actually a function and a plan where every 6 months, the amount of tokens that need to be in a node halve, okay? And this will actually be voted on and, to make sure this follows through this summer, and it'll be one of the first on-chain votes. It's open source community run network, right? And the goal is that over time, the cost to run a node in terms of staking against it keeps going down and down and down. And then it decreases the barrier to entry. And so it stands saying, oh yeah, like if you do this, what he's saying is, there's people that would be like, hey, I'll stake to your node. It's a way to like build relationships and get people staking because the MSR is high. But I promise you, this is something that I'm going to endorse very strongly. And I'm not in control of this, but I will be doing my best to get a proposal through that makes the stake quantity lower and lower and lower over time so that more people can run nodes. The network can be more decentralized. It becomes stronger. It's less brittle. And it's just, I think, a net positive in every single way, in addition to creating more supply. And back to the pool analogy, there's just more and more water in the pool if it costs less from a staking perspective to go and bring the compute resource.
Okay, that's great. And Jack, given that governance is so important for the decisions on the stake halving process, can you talk more about the governance on SKALE? There is a bunch of really good questions on how the governance works, how the governance and the governance and token are involved. What is the process to roll out governance?
Yeah, so SKALE is open source. It's community owned. Anybody who has a SKALE token owns the SKALE network, okay? That's the way it functions, and anyone can get in and see the code. Right now, upgrades are handled through a pretty decentralized multi-signature scheme. But where we want to go is two phases. One, the first phase is that on-chain voting will then inform the multi-sig community what to upgrade, okay? That's the first step, and that's been advised by all the validators. We're observing decentralized governance and in action. And SKALE is more sophisticated and elaborate than a smart contract structure on Ethereum. It's easier to automatically tweak that. SKALE is smart contracts and a sophisticated network. So there will be an interim phase of vote and then act. And actually on Cosmos recently, a vote was approved that then actually had an issue. And that would, if that not gone through this process, it would have broke the network. And thankfully they had this layer, this buffer of QAing after a vote that Cosmos uses. So that's how SKALE will start. And then what you're going to see is eventually smart contracts and economic parameters could be voted on, and then a proposal is put in And then when the vote happens, that contract's upgraded. And you're seeing that happen now in DeFi, and Scale will leverage that where it makes sense. The goal is bring power to the users, bring power to the workers, bring power to the community, and not have centralized control of the network.
Okay, and I think we have time for 2 really short questions. So first of all, use cases and dApps that are building on Scale. There are questions on DeFi, there is questions on NFTs, there are questions on decentralized exchanges. Jack, can you talk more about who is going to be using Scale, what are the dApps and Innovator program, what are the rollout plans, and the announcements that we've just made?
Yeah, I mean, so we're running a use case marathon, and I think the first half of the marathon ended, and there'll be another half that gets started, and we're just compiling more, and then they're going to be announced, okay? So please look at the Scale blog to go and run through these use cases. But the short answer is anywhere Ethereum smart contracts can be run and advantages can be gained by having faster block times, lower costs, more predictable costs, Scale is a phenomenal use case. So that's DeFi, gaming, user-owned economy, social media, security software, and more. There's been a ton of use cases that we're putting out, and I think I'm excited about it. We're excited to keep pushing more and more of these out. And some of them are very crypto native, and some of them are less crypto native, and it's crypto working its way into the fabric of established entities. And so please check out the blog. And it's like if you go to Amazon, Jeff Bezos and the Amazon team when they were building Amazon and Amazon Web Services, and they're like, so are you going to go sell just to other bookstores? Is there online e-commerce? Is that your category? Like, no, everyone will use Amazon Web Services. And they were right, okay? Everything, finance, gaming, social media, B2B, consumer, etc., uses AWS. And the Scale network is also not encumbered or limited by categories. It's more about functionality.
Yeah, that's great. So we have time for one last question, and they love the question. Jack and Stan, after this, what will Scale do next?
So I'll go first, and then Stan, please, you can close. We are just getting started, okay? We have big goals. And what we want to do is we want to see Scale chains permeate every single one of those dApp categories, okay? And our goal is by the end of the year to have all of those categories highly represented with phenomenal use cases and put more and more effort into the fabric of connecting to ecosystem to bring more and more ecosystem or industry-specific values to the Scale network. So we shouldn't go and build every single DeFi widget, okay? What we should do is make sure Scale can connect to the world of DeFi and to the global deep experts of DeFi. We shouldn't go become the world's top gaming experts and build every single gaming nuance. We need to connect Scale in an intelligent way and make sure its core works in a very adaptable manner for gaming, and then make sure that we're partnering into the gaming ecosystem to the experts in these vertical specific categories, okay? And so that's the next step. And we're not ready to stop till we have, like Stan said, I'm gonna say 100,000 servers out there, okay? Like that's where I wanna get to. And tens of thousands of Scale chains running Web3. Stan, where do we go from here?
I want to make another statement that actually, if you look at software projects like, for instance, Linux was first introduced like 30 years ago, right? And it took Linux about 10 years to even get into enterprise. The first 10 years, it was not stable enough for enterprise. Now, if you look at what Linus Torvalds is doing, or they're just perfecting the kernel. The great vision of Linus Torvalds was not to do everything bad in a bad way, but to do something in a good way. And he just concentrated on perfecting the core of Linux, the kernel, and let other people do whatever they wanted. And I think that's probably going to be the best for us also at scale. We need to make the core really, really high performance, really, really stable. And then only if this thing is very, very stable and very, very high performant and very, very easy to use, we can scale it to hundreds of thousands and millions of computers. So from some perspective, the most boring work is the most important, which is fixing bugs and making sure that this project runs a little faster every day. But step by step, if we do it, we can do really something that people can use as a tool. And the success of software usually means that no one even notices it works, right? We are talking now. I'm talking to you guys on a computer which runs Linux. Well, I don't even think about this Linux. It became so stable and so widely used, I don't even notice it. So for us at scale, the idea is that keep on perfecting it, and then people will run their dApps, or people will run their decentralized social networks, and it will be just natural for them to run on scale. So I think what's really important for us to really, really make things really, really well polished and perfected and stable. And then for other people, it will be easy to create something. So enable these people, enable this creation. So that's what we are doing. And perfecting this network will take many years. I mean, make no mistake. I think there will be some applications immediately, but the network will grow and then it will be running more and more stably. And it will be a pretty long road, I think. But we are really optimistic that this is something that really people want, and especially what you see that young people want it. The new generation wants the decentralized systems. They want to rebuild the internet, and that's really, I think, really exciting to be part of.
Yeah, and hey, Jenia, I want to say, I know we're out of time, but I want to say, and thanks, by the way, Stan, awesome answer. Okay, I want to say something really important. I've noticed a shift. So in the community, when SKALE launched in October, we had all these phenomenal people join and actually stake. And then the token went liquid in the beginning of December, and there was a huge base of amazing people. And then there's a base of people that didn't want to be part of the community for long. They were there for a short-term win. They were loud. And you know what? Those people left. They got pushed out. They weren't a fit. And this community just keeps getting stronger. And I'm proud and just honored that all of the people that are part of this mission are here because they actually believe in the long-term vision. It's not like, what's the price going to do tomorrow? And there's more and more people every day that join that aren't short-term focused, and they're focused on fundamentals and value and delivery. And I think that separates SKALE from a lot of other networks and other crypto projects that are more about hype and pump and less about delivery and long-term value. And our goal is to keep bringing in more and more amazing people that are about the long-term value. So I just thank all of you for being here today, for being a part of it. It's community owned, decentralized, and an open source effort. So thanks everybody for being part of the team.
Yes, thank you, Jack. Yeah. So I also wanted to add that support of the community matters a lot to us, and everybody who joined today. So your support and your being here in person matters hugely. Everybody who's watching this on YouTube, thank you guys. Everybody supporting SKALE on Twitter, on Telegram, it matters a lot, and the community and your support, we feel it, and it really matters. So with this event, everybody who joined, huge thank you. Everybody who asked questions, especially really good questions, will reach out. Everybody will receive we will distribute 10 SKALE t-shirts similar to the one myself or Jack are wearing right now. So thank you guys very much for asking good questions. And I wanted to also thank a lot Stan and Jack for all the great answers and for creating SKALE, as it is a real game changer in the future of scalability and the future of Ethereum. Right, Jack, Stan, thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll see all of you. We'll do another one next month, and We're pumped. I hope, let's get this Berlin update going, and SKALE will be right behind it with the SKALE chain running on the brand new ETH fork.
Love it.
You guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.